It's time to talk about gas because there's a lot going on here, and it's worth just before we kind of go deep into this, just reminding ourselves, where does gas in Europe actually come from? And, you know, in the UK, which is where we are, we often think that this is a different story, but actually this is a single market for gas. So anything going on in the continent affects us as well in terms of the prices. And there are kind of four main sources, really. So you've got liquefied natural gas. That's the stuff that comes in on tankers, a lot of it from America, some of it from Qatar. You've got EU and UK domestic production, so the UK, Netherlands as well. You've got pipelines coming in from Norway and indeed from North Africa too. But most of all, look, it's stuff coming in from Russia. And if we kind of just break it down, so look at those categories, but just look in terms of how much gas comes from each place. Well, they've got LNG, you've got pipelines, got UK production, but most of all, Russia. Just look at Russia. They're talking about, before the invasion, 37% of European gas, and that has a big bearing on economic activity compared with where we are now. So look at the change between those two bars. This is quite striking. First of all, Russia imports down 67%. Massive fall in Russia imports, mostly through pipeline. LNG's up, actually. We'll come back to that in a second. But there's another thing that's probably kind of struck you looking at this. Non-Russian supply is actually flat. Now, but back before the invasion, a lot of people thought, look, all this blue stuff is going to rise and that's going to kind of push out the Russian gas. That hasn't happened at all. It hasn't happened at all. And actually, if you kind of dig into what's going on here, OK, two things. Domestic production in the UK, Netherlands, that's down quite sharply. So look at the kind of darkest blue bit. LNG has stepped in, so we've got more stuff coming in tankers from America, but it's stepped in and it's only compensated for the fact that that is down. It hasn't pushed up the overall amount of blue we've got there. Basically, that's the same as it was before. So that's pretty striking. The upshot of all of this, though, is that there has been a big fall in the amount of gas that we're consuming across Europe, a big fall. And you've had a form of rationing to an extent. To some extent, renewables have come in to compensate for some of that fall. But actually, the big picture here is a lot of industrial plants aren't able to run as much as they were before because gas is too expensive or not available. And look at this chart. This is showing you industrial output in different sectors of the German economy, OK? And it's a similar picture in the UK, but this is just Germany at the heart. That is the Russian invasion. And the red line is energy-intensive stuff, so really energy-intensive activities. Black line is other industrial activity. Look at what happened next. So you can see that the wider industry, that's down quite a bit on the 2021 level. But energy-intensive industry, just look at that red line, that is down. And, this is the heartland, the heart of the German economy, really. That's down 20% since 2022, a really big fall. And it really comes back to this. It comes back to the fact that there is just not as much gas coming in and it has higher costs as a result. One thing, by the way, I mentioned liquefied natural gas. Look at Russian LNG. You may not be able to kind of make it out there, but this bar is higher than that bar. So actually the amount of LNG has gone up. The amount of liquefied natural gas Europe is getting in on tankers has gone up, not down. But that doesn't compensate for the fact that the pipeline gas, the stuff that comes in on pipes, is down. And it's down quite a lot, actually. If we just take that and we kind of look at the map of where those pipelines are, because there are a few of those pipelines, just look at it. It's been one by one, they've been knocked out. So Yamal was the first of them. That was sanctioned in 2022. You can see that accounts for quite a lot of the gas. That goes through Belarus. It actually stopped in 2021, so that's gone. Nord Stream, destroyed in 2022. That was the biggest of all of those pipelines. So that's gone. Look, that's gone. Now, here's the latest thing, Ukraine pipelines. So they have just stopped. So the pipeline's going through Ukraine, going to places like Slovakia, going to places like Austria. So they are at the front line of this. They have just stopped, and that is gone as well. And so we are fully reliant now, when it comes to pipeline gas in Europe, on this single Turk Stream pipe, at least pipeline gas from Russia. And the upshot of all of that is that we are much more reliant on the gas that there is in storage. OK, so this is showing you the average levels of gas in storage in Europe over the course of the last few years. You can see it goes down in winter as we dig into it, more for heating and activity, and it gets built up again in the summer. But what's interesting about this, OK, this is 2024, that red line there. And we were at really high levels of storage until the last few months. And then we've dug into that. We've been taking it out of the bank account. And partly that's because there hasn't been as much wind to generate those wind turbine power. And we start the year, it's been a bit colder as well than it was in 2024, or at least than it was the previous winter. We start 2025 with that at the lowest level it's been for quite some time. Put all of that together, so storage, what's going on with pipelines as well, and perhaps that explains why wholesale gas prices, which is what eventually feeds into the prices that we all pay, are now at the highest level that we've seen since April 2023. However, critical bit of context here. Let's take that chart and let's zoom out all the way back, the last 5 years or so, and you can see that where we are now, certainly it's a little bit higher, but it's nowhere near as high as it was during the height of that post-invasion crisis.